Om Danur Grihitva Upanishadam Mahastram Saram Hupasanashita Sanjayita Ayamya Tad Bhavikatena Chetasa Laksham Tadevaksharam Somya Vidhi. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Taking as weapon that mighty bow furnished by the Upanishads and other non-dual scriptures, fasten to it the arrow of mind, made sharpened by thoughts on reality alone. Then, practicing sadhana, release, penetrate that mark, the imperishable Brahman. Om peace, peace, peace. Om satyena labhyastapasa hyesa atma samyagyanena brahmacharyena nityam antaha sharirehi jyotirmayo hi shubhraha yam pashanti yatayaha akshina doshaha. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. The Atman, the indivisible self within all beings and all things, is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerity, and by veracity. All of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds it everywhere, existing in everything, even here in this very body. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvo Vahoi, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishuvahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings, or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We gather here at SRV in the Hawaii chapter on the Big Island for a third class now in the teaching of sadhana, dissolving the rust of spiritual life, or spiritual practices, sadhana. So we want to engage in that so that our natural propensities for seeing the Atman in everything and in everything come forth, as we just chanted. So when I first plotted and planned this 5-class series, thinking of the title for it, thought of the bucket of rusty nails that we looked at in the first class, how that so much is like the mind, full of its clogged up passageways. And I thought probably it'd be good to use about 50% of the time we have in these 5 classes for the subject of rust, and the other 50% for the subject of sadhana, because it's a 2-part series, as you can tell by the title. The rust of spiritual life, or corrosion of consciousness, is how I was putting it in the subtitle of that chart on the bucket of rusty nails we looked at. Found a very good image of that. And that really plays right into today's class. I don't even have to give much of a preamble to this time, because we can jump right into the teachings on samskaras. It's a great wonder to myself, and it was a great wonder to my teachers, and to compatriots of the path, devotees I talked to, anyone that was involved in the spiritual path that I was involved in from 1970 onward, because about 20 years of age I took it up and never looked back. So everyone I talked to along the way who was into spiritual life, it was a great wonder to them that there wasn't more said about, or more deeper understanding, or more inspection and taking about samskaras, a word that in English we'd have to look at for equivalents like impression, or maybe if it's a negative kind of thing, complex. We have a complex. They have a complex, or he or she has a complex, and they're in the hospital because of that, or they're suffering various problems due to that. And so it really would bear some deeper inspection of the mind. So many people are inspecting the body. In fact, there are not that many people even really inspecting the body in the correct way. I noticed that just yesterday, a friend of ours passed away, a relative of ours, and other people around them were sick. And it's not just advancing age that brings this on, although that is part of the cause, but it's the way people live in an unhealthy manner. You can live physically in a very healthy way, and whereas we're not putting that on the highest pedestal in SRV and in Dharma teachings, because we know if the mind is in a fine and fettled condition, then the energy that comes out from it will feed the senses, and the senses will look at the objects, whether it be objects of pleasure or objects of sustenance like food, and the whole thing will become pure from the mind out. So people not able to reach their mind yet, I can't reach my brain kind of syndrome, then they're starting to work on the way in, and they'll do that in spiritual life with fasting or organic food or hatha yoga called asanas, and maybe add in some breathing exercises. So they're coming from the outside in. The Upanishads call that, an inferior way to proceed. But in this Kali Yuga, where so many people have fallen out of occupying their consciousness, possessing their own awareness, they've given it away to superficial things, then it's, again, a great wonder that people don't see the advance of the 6 transformations ahead of time: birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, in the form of disease and decay. And they can offset that with certain practices that they do. So the advantage of Hatha Yoga, if it has any advantage at all, would be that it would set up the body for a long demise, you see, a slow death, so that it has more time for the consciousness within it to practice. I've heard people justify their use of Hatha Yoga that way, and it's sort of an acceptable position if you do. But I was just speaking about Krishnamurti talking about being asked a question about how sexuality plays a part in spiritual life, and so he would say, well, there's a path in India called Tantra by which people advance using sexuality so that they can get beyond the body. But then his conclusion to that is that, but you never do get beyond the body. You just take up a practice and you stay with that practice, whether it be fasting, sexuality, or any other thing, and you just sort of stay with that practice and never get to the result or get to the final aim and end. So in that way, we want to make sure that we don't become just professional students, but that we become accomplished yogis and yoginis. And so you would want to take something like organic food or hatha yoga or breathing exercises and take it inward up the limbs of the tree. 8 of them, by the way, if you're talking about yoga. So your next, the next limb that you're trying to master after you are accomplished enough at asana and pranayama would be pratyahara. That's the 5th limb, and people fall off of that all the time. That's a very slippery limb. And pratyahara means to control the mind. So it's obvious then that people who are taking up the yogic path are doing so without control of the mind. And so maybe control of the mind or concentration of the mind or will come slowly to them as they practice these lower limbs, and hopefully that would be ideally the best way to proceed. But then, so it's a great wonder we're saying that more people aren't studying the art of samskaras, and that there's no word in English really equivalent to it. If you use the word impression or you use the word complex, then you're talking about the brain. But when you say the word samskara or samskara skanda, you're talking about a mental body that has rust in it. The name of this series is called The Rust of Human Consciousness, or the rust of the corrosion of consciousness, you might say, so that these passageways where prana can flow outward and inward, which is, of course, the best way to end up with your energy, can open. And so that's why I say we can jump into this subject of samskaras this weekend, because last Sunday, remember, we took this chart on samskaras in the human mind, and wanted to explore it, and it'd be nice to explore it here live streaming, and also have this end up as a YouTube class series. By the way, I just finished editing Food, Prana, and Sadhana, which we did last year, so that's going to be put up on the web within the next month or two. Clears a series of 5 classes in 10 parts. So you can look for that. And that was a very good series we did that has a lot to do with this, because it's talking about food, prana, vital force, that is, you get from food, and how to do sadhana to bring this energy inward and purify the body-mind mechanism, or the psychophysical being. Again, we must say that for those beings who already have a pure mind, or already have a mind at least under their control when they come into life, they're admirable. We look at them and say, why are they so peaceful, or why are they free of restlessness? But then we also know through their life that they're also free of disease and old age and death. If they're not, even if they die early, they're free of the fear of dying. So all of these are levels of awareness that people with pure minds or balanced minds, sattvic minds, have already attained before they get into the body. And this is beginning to breach or broach the subject of samskaras, so that we know that there's birth in all sorts of wombs possible, as Krishna says in the Gita. Lord Vashishta also says that in his scripture, Yoga Vashishta. There are birth in so many wombs possible for beings. So they can choose forms, is sort of the go-to conclusion of that. And if they're making good choices and you see them in a human form, because remember, Holy Mother said, people who come to the higher gurus don't come there for fun, or to have pleasures, or to covet objects, or to wreak havoc on other people through the desire for power and war, and those kinds of souls. They come so that they can refine their consciousness more and more, so that they can transcend the body and birth. So that begins already to define the word samskara from a different angle. We have to look at it from different angles, outside in, inside out, from both sides now, top, bottom, however way we can look at it, so we get the clues to it, because the culture has not picked it up yet, even after all these years since Vivekananda has been here, 1893, Parliament of Religions. That's a long time to get on board with some of these teachings, like samskaras, that would change the nature of the consciousness of your culture if you took them seriously, like India has for thousands of years. India produced the Upanishads and the Gita and the non-dual scriptures and hundreds of prophets and saints and seers and even avatars due to this kind of understanding of life and mind, and also of spiritual life and transcendence, non-duality. So we should be sitting up and paying attention all the way back for thousands of years to these great souls. I just mentioned Lord Vashishta. He's back with Sri Ram. You know Sri Ram? Do we have to remind ourselves of Sri Ram ever? Sri Ram Chandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana bhavabhaya daranam navakanchalochana kanchamukakara kanchanavatam garunam Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ramchandra Kripalu Vajamana Arana Bhavabhaya Dharanam. That Ramchandra, Lord Vashishta, was the priest in his father's court in the Kosala kingdom. And so Sri Ram was just a young boy when he took teachings from Lord Vashishta. And so we talk about thousands of years back when we even mention a soul like that. And if you go back and look at that scripture, there's so many teachings about principles like samskaras. So you say samskara, it should, if your mind is open, and you want your channels to open, that is your nadis, to open inwardly toward the kingdoms of heaven, even if you want to put it that way, then you should say samskara and follow it up with the word rebirth or reincarnation. As those two go together, like peas and carrots. They go together. You would have to have one with the other. So neither of those words are used. Reincarnation sometimes would be considered a theory or even a joke by most people in the Western culture today. But if you say that, then you're speaking relative truth to the Hindu or to the Buddhist or to the Sufi or to the Jain. There are many, many thousands of people who understand these teachings, and therefore their spiritual lives are on the move. They have a spiritual life, for one thing, because the disciples along the river, when Christ came, didn't have a spiritual life. Obviously, he wouldn't have said, I'll make you fishers of men, but first you have to follow me. You have to get an eternal life. You have to understand what eternal life is. Well, samskaras are beginning to understanding what eternal life is. Anything you examine in terms of it having an origin, that's according with spiritual life. If you examine it just for its outer properties and what you can get for it, it doesn't have spiritual connotations attached to it. Which is why when we look at objects or even particles of objects, we're not getting satisfaction from it. If we're understanding anything at all, we're understanding just the mechanics and the dynamics of the physical level of our consciousness only. And if people are attached to their bodies as being the only reality, which India says is the first evolute of delusion, then that's as far as they'll go. But so rust of human consciousness sets in, or has set in those cases, for many lifetimes. So it's so thick, that rust, that they don't remember a time when they were free of that rust. They don't remember that their Atman is galvanized steel. They've been galvanized, you see. They've been tempered steel. It resists that kind of rust. So this is what the seers come back again and again to tell us, that if you have many lifetimes in Maya, you begin to think the world is real. I just quoted Sri Ramakrishna. If you have many lifetimes in the ignorance in Maya, you begin to believe the world is real. He's putting that in such a way as to infer that the world isn't real, for one thing, so you have to catch that gist. So when he speaks that way, he's telling you that there was a time when you didn't believe the world was real. And you came into it maybe to sport and to play, knowing that it wasn't real. When did this seriousness about it being real overtake you in the form of rust, corrosion on your consciousness, that you began to think the unreal was the real? And if you're a Vedantist, of course, you're already beginning to yawn. Oh, you see, because this is like Vedanta 101. Nitya, Vastu Viveka. The difference between the real and the unreal has to be seen first, and then you can have a spiritual life. That's called Viveka. That's why Swamiji named himself that when he came to America in 1893, so that we would get a clue I better just start discriminating so I'll understand why I keep coming back in this same condition. Person yesterday, a friend of ours, died of cancer. They never smoked in their whole life. But the husband smoked. See? So the husband smokes, and now he's got cancer now, we find out. See? And someone else in the family has cancer too. So families come back, people come back, souls come back, just like pods of whales or packs of wolves or gaggles of geese or any other groups of various species that you can find and name. We've looked into many of them. Dens of lions would be nice, if you're talking Vedantically. But souls come back with one another due to these samskaras. And that's probably the most open doorway I can throw ajar for you. See, to enter into the subject today, which is just barely beginning to breach the idea of sadhana, that you would have to do some sort of sadhana or have some sort of spiritual practice in order to uncover the fact that samskaras are responsible for your presence here in the body. And samskaras, of course, are going to be connected with desires. So and samskaras and desires are going to be connected with mental projection, sankalpas. So those are the three charts I have for you today. These two about samskaras, how desires fuel samskaras over many lifetimes, and how it's all done out of projection of the mind. The mind's fond hope that it will somehow find some satisfaction out here in the land of the five elements. Why do you roam all about, you see, looking in this world of five elements? None of this belongs to you. See, it's all alien to you. You're a foreigner in a foreign land. The Song of India goes on to sing, Mono Chalo Nija Nikitane. First song Vivekananda ever sang to his guru, Sri Ramakrishna, when they met in that lifetime, their most recent lifetime, back in the 1800s. So that door that we've just thrown ajar has to do with samskaras, and we looked into this chart last week, and we found out that this isn't just theory, and it's not just speculation, and it's definitely not a joke for people who are wanting to know the reasons why they're here. To go on asking the question, why? And never getting an answer is kind of a problem, isn't it? So we looked at this chart, so we won't go through it a lot, just to tell you that if we went around the circle here, you found out that there's desires for pleasure, there's root ignorance, there's negative samskaras that are finding their way into the mind. They're based in birth, gender, life, personality, death, and rebirth. In these kinds of settings, these samskaras are formed. The Buddhists are very good at explaining this via the 12 links, or nidanas. We mentioned them last week too. I could probably bring those to a class like this, but you'll find them. Also, as a person goes through birth and life and personality traits are developed, passes into death and gets reborn again and again and again, they do so through craving, ego obsession, the urge to dominate over others, and body identification. So those things are conditioning consciousness all the time. Consciousness in its non-dual level cannot be conditioned. It's pure, ever pure. And so that's what the seers aim for and reach. It's called enlightenment. So when they've reached that station, none of this, including rebirth or samskaras, applies to them. On the way, positive samskaras like this would apply to some people. Like, for instance, they start thinking about energy, their prana, morality, proper orientation, altruism. That even begins to sound like the Eightfold Path, Buddha. And attitude, higher learning, positivity, religious faith comes to them. And finally, service, wisdom, compassion, peace, and illumination comes to them. That's where we listen to Holy Mother when she said, if you see these manifesting in the soul, that you can be sure that that's their last lifetime. They don't have to come back to the body again. Or they don't have to come back to the body again in ignorance. They can come back to sport, knowing that the world is unreal and that the sport is temporary, and only Brahman is real, and only Brahman is immutable and eternal. And they are that. I am that, is how they would say that. That thou art, tat tvamasi. So they've reached that very high pedestal, position, if it can even be called that. Well, a lot of the dynamics and attributes on this side of positive samskaras, you can see it down here, positive samskaras, negative samskaras, mixed samskaras in the middle. A lot of the ones on this side of the chart then have to do with actions, merits, and deeds. So you've become conscious about your actions, you're turning demerit into merit, and your deeds are becoming altruistic, as we say, with the proper orientation. Also, mental capacity and intelligence start to play into the samskaric makeup very powerfully. It is, you are developing samskaras that are positive as you are doing away with samskaras that are negative. You don't see this going on in your mind, but you can tell by watching yourself over years, as you do sadhana. Sadhana gives you this perspective of witness consciousness. Those beings know how their non-transforming consciousness transforms. That is how their witness consciousness never transforms, but their mind's consciousness is transforming. So if they watch the mind change itself from impure mind to mixed pure mind to pure mind, as Tantra says, then they're moving in a trajectory that's from the unreal to the real, or from outer to inner to transcendent. Three worlds, they call that. And so as they watch their consciousness shift like that, they're staying the same. They're just standing there, open arms, waiting to meet. The lower self is, as it were, waiting to meet the higher self. The ahamkara is moving towards the purusha. And as it does so, it loses its memory of it being a ahamkara. It loses its memory of being an ego. That's why you don't remember your past lifetimes, whether you're ignorant or illumined. You don't remember your past lifetimes. You only remember your past lifetimes somewhere between ignorant and illumined, because they were never real. But you based your samskaras on them for rebirth, just like a child is basing its lifetime on how its teeth grows. It's, when it cuts teeth, it knows it can eat, and then it can basically survive. So spirituality, there's a kind of cutting of tooth going on, and then there's an eating that has to go on with this knowledge, imbibing knowledge, and finally that becomes realization. And the difference between looking at an image and having yearning, and looking at an image and having realization is there, even in objects. Like we could look at a picture of Sri Ramakrishna now, or Holy Mother, and we if we're yearning for them, then our consciousness is awakening. But if we look at the picture and we realize what a great boon it is to be able to look upon the face of God and Goddess, then we're realized. I'm saying this because I had that experience recently, just I can actually look at God now by just seeing their picture. One Swami told me once, pointing to a picture of Sri Ramakrishna on the wall, that's the first time God was photographed. So I took that to mean, and it was partially true, that that was the first time in this age that the avatar had come forth in a body, that people could actually see him when the art of photography was possible and available to us. And so somebody snapped a picture of him in Samadhi, so there was the avatar, and it was the first time it ever got photographed. Maybe it was painted before, but this was the first time we saw it photographed. But there's a realization that goes beyond with that statement, is that you can look at a picture of Sri Ramakrishna now and see that that is a boon and blessing upon you. that you are seeing God in human form when you look at a picture. You don't have to be in the same locale with him, the same body with him at the same age. He lived. He's proof of his own existence. And so is she. So, and that's not just mere inference, like in philosophy either. That's actually seeing that beings like that came to earth, showed you their bodies, their faces, their eyes, told you the teachings, you heard about the realizations of the teachings. That's just a wide open door for you to sit there and look at their picture and get free immediately. Christianity has you waiting, you see. Grace and predestination, that's a wait. Maybe 2,000 years wait. My teacher used to say that, you see. But Buddhism teaches you about karma. If you understand karma, then you can do something and about your situation. You don't have to wait for 2,000 years. You can free yourself this very second. That's how my teacher used to say it. You don't have to wait for a long time for predestination and grace to kick in. With karma and doing a little practice, you can free yourself today. So that's how important it is to wake up. You see, right? Wake up and realize the import of a word like samskara or samskara skandha. So that's where we're going after just a brief expose and revisiting of this, is to this chart here. You'll have to, those of you who are joining us anew, you'll have to look back to last week's class to see more about that. But this is the second chart on samskara that's now gotten a colorization, because we've had these charts out for some years now. This is a beautiful image I found from Ramnan collection in India that he's vouchsafed to us to use. And it shows this beautiful painting of everything that's going on with all these people on all different levels in history. And you can see that samskaras have been up for discussion since Buddha gathered with his disciples back in 550 BC, for instance. If you want to go back at least that far, here's a quote. The discerning person straightens the mind, which is fickle, unsteady, and difficult to restrain, as the skilled fletcher straightens the shaft of the arrow. So, if you're a fletcher, my second grade teacher's name was Mrs. Fletcher. I remember her. She never knew what that meant till later, but that was an old word right out of Lord Buddha's time. You see, where Fletcher was somebody who straightened the arrow and sold the arrows to the army of the king, so they could use them in his fights with other kings. So if you have to straighten that shaft. That's fletching the arrow. So in that same way, Buddha uses that as a metaphor, just like Jesus and Shankara and Sri Ramakrishna used those kinds of metaphors later in life for spiritual teachings. To straighten your mind that way, you have to make sure that it's absolutely free of any kind of angularities whatsoever, so that that arrow will go straight to its mark, which is what I just chanted when we started the class. Dhanur grahitva upanishadam mahastram sharam yupasanashita sandhyayita. Take that bow, that mighty bow called the scriptures, and fasten to it the arrow of your mind. But make sure the head is sharpened by thoughts on reality alone first. See? If there's rust, or if the shaft is crooked, or if there's rust on the arrowhead, you make sure you take all that off. You see, make it a perfect arrow. So this is what he's saying. And it infers then that there are angularities in the mind. There are restlessness and unsteadiness, problems in the mind that people are laboring under as they do their deeds. You shouldn't be doing that. You see. Any deed you do, any thoughts you have, any word you speak, if it's flavored by angularities or restlessness and things in the mind, it's coming out crooked. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that elephants' tusks should come out, but they shouldn't go back in. You know what happens when an elephant's tusk comes out? A big bull elephant, the thing curves back in and starts growing into its jaw. That's called a rogue elephant. He goes berserker, you see, in the village. picks up little Hindu men, smashes them on the ground, and tramples over huts and things. See? So you don't want the tusks to go back in. So this is a man's word. Krishna is talking about. His word should be straight, should come out straight. It should have its effect, its positive effect out here, where he projected it. And if it curves and goes back in, that's not going to be any good for anyone, including himself. He'll suffer pain and he'll inflict pain on others. So in the same way, if you have some skaras of negativity in your mind, or mix some skaras, you're running the risk of your words, your deeds, your thoughts, and any other vibration you put out there of having a negative effect. That's called karma. So this is where we have to connect some skaras to karma. So people who smoked and died, see, they smoked in a past lifetime. And they came back in this lifetime with the desire to smoke. And this lifetime they smoked, they died of cancer again, they're going to smoke in the next lifetime. Same with drug addicts. And so at some point you have to do sadhana to stop this process from happening. You're going to withdraw yourself from your ancestors. Why? Because your ancestors keep smoking, they keep drinking, they keep fighting, they keep going to war, they keep murdering, they keep getting sidetracked by the superficial things of life, rather than getting to the point. Their tusks are always growing back in on themselves. So you want to stop that process. It's called getting off the wheel of rebirth, snapping the chain of samsara. Everyone's talked about it, from Buddha on up to Sri Ramakrishna. That's, in our own history, 2,500 years. If they've been talking about it that long, isn't it about time that we step up and listen, you see? Not just listen, shravana, to hear, but manana, to actually use our mind, manas, to straighten the thoughts in it. Because if our mind is coming out crooked, then our acts are crooked, our deeds are crooked, and the effects of our acts are crooked. Even sometimes if they appear not to be crooked at first, they turn crooked later, you might have noticed. And this is true of individuals, this is true of families, this is true of nations, it's true of cultures, and it's true of your ancestors. All of these beings are falling in the 3 lower chakras. And it's only when you reach the heart, you start to straighten things out. You understand here. Heart and mind come together. The 2 wings of the bird, love of God and understanding of non-dual reality, come together. These are as if rendered ineffective now. They're burnt ropes. They may look like ropes still, but they don't bind you anymore. They can't bind you anymore. And this is all a matter of stepping forward, taking what is yours, and destroying anything that's in the way of taking what is yours. Back to the title of our class, the rest of, sadhana, the rest of, dissolving the rest of spiritual life. We need to use this practice to get back to square one. It's not the best scenario. The best scenario was never to have come into this condition in the first place, where you have any doubt about your true nature. You should be shining all the time. Come out of the womb shining, like we've seen some beings do. And being able to stem the tide of Maya before it even gets into your mind, to feed or fuel the samskaras that are there. The seeds. Samskaras are like seeds. So let's look at that. Here's a samskara skanda, you see right here. So I put this same Buddhist cloud as a nice little kind of image to use for the mind. See, we know what the brain looks like, but the mind is kind of like that. It's got, it has a formation, a hazy formation to it. All the worlds are in it. So if you were to have a witness consciousness look at the collective mind, you'd see like this big vibration, this hub of vibrations going on in this big complex. And you'd be looking at the different levels of it and people doing different things in it. And your world would be there too. All the worlds of action, whether they be physical action or thought action, would be there in that collective mind. And you're, like Buddha, backed off from it, and you've freed yourself from it, and you're looking at it in wonder and calling it Mahamaya, you see. It's the great enchantress's, this is her work, you see, as it were. And beings are playing into it, and many of them are sporting and returning to her, like bees flying out of her black hair, big black bumblebees, you see, and then flying back into her hair. That's a description of Mother Kali. She's this, the dance of the Naumanan. She's this terrible specter to behold, but she's also wonderful. So all the souls are like black bees. They're coming out of her hair and going back in. These are souls that know that everything apart from her is unreal, but still fun. And so they can do that. You see, they can project themselves out in this positive sankalpa, and with positive samskaras, sport there and just return to her hair, and it's great fun. She winks at them. She, keep doing that, children, you're my children, keep doing that. But then the rest of this collective mind, you see, that doesn't have access to the Trinity, that doesn't have access to the saints, seers, and great souls, are falling further and further away from that in the spectrum, and down into the rainbow worlds, and so the rainbow worlds down towards the physical worlds. And this can't be denied because you see it right here in the physical world. Billions of souls, how many billion now are here doing this dance in front of you? And you're supposed to move through it and not expect that it has some sort of origin, or that there's some sort of karma directing it all, or some sort of great power underlying it. That's not thinking. That's not even non-thinking. That's dementia. And you can call that sanity. Oh, we're all demented, but let's just pretend like that's sane, and let's all do that, you see. And then we're just, misery loves company, let's just throw it all in, you see. Throw in the towel and stop fighting. But these great souls that are looking on, they're free of these impressions that cause them to, their minds to coagulate around a certain collection of unhealthy elements. That's called a samskara skandha. So here's that follow-up chart from this. We said this is samskaras in the human mind. I hope we followed that this is what's causing people to live their life. This is how their life gets influenced, good, bad, mixed, indifferent, whatever. We follow it deeper, we look into what's actually in a samskara. That's what this chart's about, including a samskara skandha. We might as well take it up there. There's the samskara skandha, and what it says here is that it consists of conventional beliefs. That's the first thing, this box. Conventional beliefs is the first bullet point. Then parental and gender issues are rolled into a samskara skandha. These are individual flavorings inside of one complex, you see. It's like a soup that you've added different things in, you see. So there's carrots and there's potatoes and there's beets and so forth inside of a samskara skandha. So this is a mental soup, and what are the ingredients inside of each particular impression in the mind. Another one is tendency to brood and worry. Adds into that, you see. And then inability to love or be loved. Take your pick. There's so many people in that boat. Inability to love or be loved. Fear is there as an admixture, especially of death. Fear of death is the fifth and lowest hell, according to Father of Yoga. All you Hatha yogis out there have been following that very limited type of yoga. Do you know what the Father of Yoga says about the mind? Not just about the brain, which is a part of the body, but about the mind. That it suffers 5 kinds of hells, and the lowest of that is fear of death. Why would that be? Because death is an illusion. Why else would he say it? See? Why would you fear something that's not real? See? So you've made it real. And you're so afraid of it being real that you actually have the undead coming back now. You see, you're not going to reincarnation. It's like, oh, here comes my enemy or my friend again in another lifetime. I have to pay the piper. You're actually leaving them dead and then making them undead. That's the trend of humanity nowadays. It's in all their movies, you see. So you won't go to reincarnation and satisfy your karmas and get enlightened. You'd rather have the undead come back and chomp on your body? Is that dementia or what? Don't laugh it off. Quoting Krishnamurti there. See? We're here to explore this. If he were talking right now about it, he'd say, don't laugh this off. We don't know anything here in the world. We don't know anything. None of us know anything. We're here to explore it. And so this is what you do. We're exploring the principle of a samskara inside of a class called sadhana, destroying the rust, or dissolving the rust of consciousness or human mind, the rust that gets in there. So fear of death especially is at the root of this samskara skandha, along with animalistic tendencies. These actually started out more subtle and got grosser as you went to the bottom. I put them in that order on purpose. Because if you could break through mundane human convention, that would pretty much be the first thing you need to do. You need to look at your boss at work. You need to look at your grandmother. You need to look at your family or your parents and tell them to, what's a pleasant way of putting it? See, I can think of several unpleasant ways of thinking. Anywhere from go to hell to bugger off. Get out of my face. Move aside. I'm not going to be trapped in your nonsense anymore. That's mundane human convention. And it's happening in cultures, and they want you to go to war and kill for peace, and it's all Mayic. See, your ancestors want you to live and be healthy so they can have bodies in you after they die, so they can come back and live again like they did before, insipidly, on the surface of things. That's convention. It's mundane human convention. It's superficial. There's no depth in it, and there's no release from it. Short of doing some sadhana and getting rid of the rust that's set in over many, many lifetimes of that kind of thinking. That would be the first thing you'd have to do in order to get to the root samskara. So you see, you're getting down to the deep depths of the consciousness of the mind. You looked at your body and you said, oh, there's something wrong with it. You did some exercise, you ate better food, hopefully. Or you looked at your lungs, why are they getting cancer? Or you looked at early onset everything, because everything now is turning early onset, have you noticed? Early onset diabetes, early onset cancer, early onset dementia. Oh, the earlier it comes for them, the better, because they can invent medicines and make money off you. See, so it's all early onset. Now you better watch out for it. And so where's it based in? Fear. Fear of death. But you don't have to fear death, it's not real. You're an eternally living soul. And your soul was never created. You can't create a soul. Consciousness doesn't get created. And that way we can look at Patanjali and Buddha and all the way up to Krishnamurti. He just said it the other day on the TV I saw, on one of his old talks. There is no God. There's just you. You're it. You're God. But you're certainly not acting like it yet. So there is a transcendental reality that Buddha, Krishna, and all of them know about. And they aligned with it, they identified with it, they became it, and then they came back saying, there's no God in the world is in God. You are never in Maya, Maya is in you. So whether you put it in terms of God or godless, it's all in you. And that's the capital U, the capital I. That's I in fullness. Tantra calls it Shiva. I in fullness. That's the true I. And that is reality. So if you're speaking on the level of realized souls like that, that's what they're living in. Like I just said, they can look at a picture of a great soul and just have samadhi right there with the picture. They don't have to go back in history or go into a sankalpa or wait 2,000 years for him to come back. They're having it right there. And yes, you have to believe this. It starts with belief, but then it turns into faith, and then it turns into realization. Belief, faith, realization. You have to hold them for a long time. Sure, in between belief and faith, there might be a little blind faith. See, there are periods you go through. These are levels of rust that you're sanding off. These are angularities in the arrow that the Fletcher's trying to remove by lots of work, lots of elbow grease. So finally it can look in the final product and be free, sail free. Sail with me, sail with me. Cast off the moorings that bind you to the harbor of mundane human convention. Say, Kali, Kali, Kali. That's the song in India. What did he just say? Cast off the moorings that bind you to the harbor of mundane human convention. So in this samskara skandha, which I'm trying to take apart a little bit longer here, you've got these kinds of admixtures in a samskara skandha. And a samskara skandha is what's going to cause you to be reborn. Samskaras themselves will influence how you are when you're born. But if it becomes a skandha, a complex, then that's something that you're not going to be able to break apart. That's your clump of rusty nails in the bucket. You have to take a hammer to that, you see. So samskaras, everyone has them. The wise have them. Seers have them. Saints have them. The saints' samskara is devotion to God. The seer's samskara is devotion to the wisdom of God. So they have samskaras they're coming back with too, but they're living productive lives, and it's all a play to them. Even the good things they do to humanity, they don't make any never mind to Brahman. They're not laboring under some idea that I'm doing God's work. They're just naturally exuding the truth. In Tibetan Buddhism, this is probably the best thing to call it is Mahamudra, the great seal. You know everything's empty, but it's radiant too. That's how they explain it. It's all empty, so what's such the big fuss about it? Either owning it or not owning it, renouncing it or enjoying it. Neither one's very appealing to that kind of soul. It's empty, that's all, but it's radiant. So I should just sit in that radiance. It's fine with me. It's sort of like, do I need to know how far away the sun is from the earth? Or am I just going to sit there in the sun and enjoy it? That's what enlightenment is like, sitting in the sun of your own realization. They don't need to know all the details. They only need to know the details if somehow a bunch of clouds are getting in front of the sun. You want to know where the sun went to for so long. Like if you live in Portland, Oregon, see, their football team is called the Ducks. You see. They're always raining. You see, they're always playing football in the rain. We had to adapt. You see. So in Oregon, the headlines of the newspaper once a year is Portlanders come out of their houses to see this strange orb in the sky. Nobody knows what it's called. They've been in rain so long and there's clouds so long that they don't know what the sun is called. They forgot its name. So people are like that with rebirth. They've lived in the rust of corrosion of consciousness so long in tandem with their ancestors that they don't know what enlightenment's like. They don't know what the radiance of the mind is like. The natural radiance of the mind, which is Atman, which is Brahman, which is Buddha nature, which is you, your true nature. So a samskara skandha then, if you have one of them, or if anyone has one of them, that's what you have to get down there with the hammer of sadhana and start busting it apart. See, with as many vicious blows as you can possibly render it. Just again and again till you've got at least down to its component parts, and then you can start working on the rust, sanding the rust away like the Fletcher does the arrow. That's kind of the makeup of this chart right away if you want to look at the makeup of a samskara skandha. Well, the name of the chart is that, but you can see here, in order to bring a little bit more clarity into this, I've taken and put little black images there. I've taken circles with minuses in them. I've taken circles with with a small case I in them. And you can see how those are below. The little lowercase I is a positive impression in the mind. A minus is a mixed impression. Black is a negative impression. So let's look at some of those. In the typical mind of a human being, as it says here, the subtle body of a stereotypical person. Just that statement alone is telling us that we have a second body. That we can give up our obsession with this physical body, and we can begin to shift some of our attention over to a subtle body. Would be one very simple way of putting this. What's all the fuss about this body? It's only a few pounds of ash in the end, as Holy Mother said. Well, that's looking ahead to death. But if we just want to look ahead just to tomorrow, or to how much growth I can make spiritually in this lifetime, then we'd probably want to take this stance. I better start looking at my subtle body, because they say it exists. And I'm living in it all the time without knowing it, see. I mean, basically, even the physical world is a manifestation of your mind. That's back to the Mahamudra teaching. The view. What is the view in Mahamudra? You start out with the view, and you end up with action in the view. But you start out with the view. The view is what? The view is all worlds exist in the mind. That's the view. And it's not so hard to believe if you inspect it, because you're seeing the world right now through the five elements. You're seeing the world of the five elements through the five senses. Tell me, where do the five senses connect to? So the mind is foisting everything on you through the five senses. You think the senses and elements don't have any connection? That they don't connect back to the brain, and the brain doesn't connect back to consciousness? Then how is everything happening? How are you tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling? How are you questioning, why should I be tasting, touching, hearing, feeling, and smelling? Who's asking, who am I? And so forth. So you're taking this all back to an origin. That's just on the physical level that you can believe what I'm saying and begin to inspect it. But there are philosophical levels that are much more profound and refined to convince you that this world exists in the mind, like deep sleep tonight. It's gone. Goodbye, bye. Where did it go? Where did I go last night for a number of hours when I stopped breathing, when the ego didn't exist anymore, when my problems went away, when my desires weren't there, when my job and hopes and everything were gone? Philosophically speaking, what happened? Shouldn't I inspect that? Maybe it's true that all of that exists in the mind then, because when the mind shut down, it shut down. There was one thing that didn't shut down. That was prana. That's Mother's power, prana. She kept it going because she'd wake up again. So all the energy would come flowing down these nerves back into the body. But it would start with the mind, and it would come back to the prana, and the prana would come back to the senses, and the senses would come back to the elements, and there's the world again. 24 hours later, oops, there it's gone again. 24 hours later, it's back. And I'm back. And this happens over and over and over again, and pretty soon you're going to let it become mundane human convention and believe in it. You're going to believe in change. And you'll never know what changeless is. Brahman is changeless, everything else has change in it. The Vedanta has put it so nicely for you. Brahman is the one unchanging principle, verity, and everything else changes. Everything else, even the Trinity, changes. They change their positions every 4,320,000,000 years times a lifetime of days. So then am I going to build my house on that sand of change? Yes, thousands, billions are going to do that. And they'll keep circulating. You see, the worldlies circulate, but the holy circumambulate. So beings are circulating through the three worlds, and oftentimes not knowing what's happening to them. In the same way, they're here and they don't know what's happening in heaven. When they get to heaven, they don't know what's happening here. So whatever world they're in, they're restricted to that world. Their consciousness is restricted to that world. So in heaven, you'll find, talking with your ancestors, they say there's a place called Earth that you can go to. Oh, I don't believe it. You see? You get my gist? In heaven, they're talking about us as if we don't exist. And here we're talking about them as if they don't exist. But there's nothing but existence. And let's explore it. Not shut down or shut off to it. Just explore it. Open up the possibilities. Because we're living those possibilities all the time. And they're available to us as well. This is called an eternal life or a spiritual life. And it's hampered by lack of sadhana. See? The watchman. See, the watchman, what's his rust? Remember? Failure to be on guard, you see. Failure to be on guard all the time. And what's the rust of monasteries? Non-recitation of scriptures. And what's the rust of households? The ability, the lack of practice, spiritual practice. That's the rust of households. So there's a rust in every cross-section of life. And what's the rust of all good things? Apathy. Not caring, you see. So we have to wake up and care about these things. And be a good thing to start with the Dharma. Because morality only got you a certain distance. But when you started to awaken your intelligence, you found out that there was something as higher teachings called, and that would explain things to you. These things, when they're explained to you, would keep the rust from forming, but they'd also leave you in such a condition that you could get enlightened. It's not that we want to forget everything and then remember it in some struggle. See, there's the suffering, and then there's the struggling, and then there's the seeking. There's those who suffer, there's those who struggle, and those who seek, and then those who are enlightened. So these cross-sections of beings are also modes of the mind. Suffering, struggling, seeking. At least get to the seeking, but when you get to the seeking, realize that what you're seeking is about to suggest itself to you, and as the rust of spiritual life goes away and the samskaras dissolve, there it is. There it always was. You just let this veil, these different levels of veils of rust fall in front of your sight. This third eye was closed. So here are some of the kinds of samskaras that are in a mind. Here I told you that they were there. Here I'm telling you these are what they are made of. For instance, let's take this black one here. You see the first one. This person is attached to pleasure and always in pursuit of wealth. That's a samskara in their mind. Have you seen them? Are you one of them? You see? They're, as my father used to say, goddamn pleasure seekers. That's what he would say. He really looked down his nose at that. And they're always in pursuit of wealth, as if that's some sort of solution. Say, okay, how about the next one? Oh, sorry, it's another black one. Tendency towards addiction due to substance abuse in previous lives. I've pulled that out on several occasions to let people know that crack babies had a lifetime where they were addicted. They're still addicted when they die, so they're going to look for those parents that will supply them with what they had in their last lifetime This is karma. This is the inexorable law of karma. If you understand karma, you can free yourself. But in order to understand karma, you're going to have to get rid of your aversion to the truth. You think God is going to save you? Did Christ save thousands of people with cancer over the last 2,000 years? What does saving mean to you? That you get to live forever in the body? Because that wasn't his idea of freedom. He didn't even want you to come into the body. Birds have nests, foxes have holes. You have no place to lay your head here. What does that sound like? Doesn't it sound like Buddha and Krishna saying the same thing? Birth and death are very painful. May you never have to experience them again. Was there something that you didn't understand when she said that? So, karma is an inexorable law, and you have an aversion to the fact. You think something's going to come along and save you, someone. But you did this to yourself, now you undo it, is what karma's telling you, see. Give up your addictions, get over your obsessions. Take a hammer that the teacher gives you and break apart this collection of rusty nails in that bucket you call a mind. You might empty the water out first, see, so that no more rust will come along. It's kind of what we're saying here. Sadhana is the act of taking the bucket, emptying it out. Then you can get at the rusty components and break them apart. And then what did Buddha say about buckets? He has a teaching about Dharma bucket. He says, get a bucket and run around collecting little drops of Dharmic rain. It's called, both Hinduism and Buddhism say the same thing about it. It's called rain cloud of virtues. They call it rain cloud of virtues. So you have a bucket means I now have the ability to do a practice. My teacher gave it to me. Now he told me what to do. Now I have to do it. So he told me to do 108 repetitions of my mala. So the first day after I got my mantra, I sit down and do 108. That's one drop in my bucket. I can now say, I've done that, and I can look in the bucket and I can see a little bit of drop of water there, you see, in the bucket of my mind. Now I need to just have these experiences, and the more it fills, the more I have not a bucket of rusty nails anymore, but a bucket of wisdom, a container full of higher understanding and compassion and other things that the rain cloud of virtue will bring you come with that. See? You might even fill your bucket, decide to pour it into someone else's and go fill it again, like the great souls do, helping others. See? I can get more, take mine. See? Well, badge of authority, it's nothing. See? Here, I'll give you my badge of authority. Oh, I can get another one. Well, let's look at a different kind of samskara in the mind. There's a little eye there with a dot. This person practiced religion in a past existence and has the potential for awakening. There's one called genealogy there, you see. That's kind of a mixed bag. It's a mixed samskara. That is, if you look from the outside in, biology and so forth, and, looking into the neuropeptides, the various fluid essences of the body, which yoga has known about for hundreds and thousands of years, you'll find out that there might be some little code in there that's causing you to be born in a certain way. Maybe you want to play with that code, you see, play God. But actually that code was put there in that particular little strain by the mind, by the actions it did in a previous lifetime. So it can change that strain, and that code, and that DNA, and all that. That's just physical stuff. The mind's in charge of all that. So we have to think of residues coming from the mind through past lifetimes, actually getting into our very genes and into our whole biology and influencing them. And therefore we can free them from such influences too. by what we do in this lifetime. Oh, I don't think I'll believe anymore in eternal damnation. Nah, I'm done with that. So all of a sudden your whole genealogy and everything, all the way back to your mind, is like, I'm happy now, thank you, I got rid of that samskara skandha that's in the minds of billions of people right now. God can somehow be all compassionate, but that there's this devil over there that's not a part of God, that's causing me to go to eternal hell when there's a compassionate God there. See, how can that be? So I just got rid of one element of my samskara that I've been holding for hundreds of years, maybe lifetimes, and now it's gone. And let's start working on evolution next, you see. Because here's the loggerhead, as my teacher said. One cross-section of beings believing in seven-day creation theory and eternal damnation, and that you can only be saved by a person who hasn't been here for 2,000 years. The other cross-section of humanity believing in physics only, and that we were once monkeys. If you want, they're trying to get me to believe that if I want to see my relatives, I have to go to the zoo. But my relatives aren't in physical. Their origin isn't in the physical, their origin's in consciousness. And that goes inside, thank you very much, not outside. So, genealogy, might as well put anyone, race and culture. See, here's one. Forgetful due to the lack of study in a previous lifetime. Forgetfulness. All of these mixed bag samskaras, race and culture, temperament, personality. See, those are all put in there. Here's one, humble, but also insecure. How something can be mixed like that. Can have potential, but then can have the element that can short circuit that potential at the same time. Isn't that sound familiar? Patanjali would say that's why you make one step forward and fall 2 steps back all the time. So that's a spiritual problem. That's where people start to try and take 1 step forward, but the next time they look at themselves, they've fallen 2 steps back. How did that happen? See? And you can trace it right back to these little buggers, see, little germs in the mind. And these aren't physical germs, these are mental germs consisting of thoughts and various things that don't take up any space, so you can't find them with a telescope or with a microscope, outside or inside, you can't find them. There's the seer, there's the seen, there's the unseen, and there's the obscene. That's the way I put it in one of my charts. The seer, the seen, the unseen, and the obscene. See? You're the seer. And here's what you see. How deeply do you see? Do you see back into the samskaras of your mind? And if you have, and you've done the work with your hammer of sadhana, if I had a hammer, you see, shall we sing the song together? If I had a hammer, it's right out of our own lifetime in the 60s. So if I had a hammer and I've pulverized the nails and rusty nails of samskaras in my mind, now I can see how it happened to me, and now I can look out and see it in others. See? And I can go to them and say, would you like a hammer? Which is why I sit here every Sunday for years speaking this way. Do you want a hammer? I have one for you. Pick it up. Never let it go till I tell you to. Don't let it go before it's time, because I have people that do that too. Betray the trust I put in them. They're the worst. They're worse than evil. So take up a hammer, get your commitment, follow through and realize yourself. And then we can compare notes. That's how Vivekananda put it. If you go 1 iota off the path I've dictated for you, then you and I are on a par. You know what that means? You know about golf and so forth? We may be running in parallel paths, but we'll never meet. Because you're going to hell and I'm not. You're going to hell in a handbasket and I'm going to enlightenment. So You want a hammer? Pick it up with the courage of your original conviction and use it until you get free. Then we can compare notes, he said. Not until. I have to be absolutely 100% sure that you're going to follow through on this commitment, on this mantra you were given, on this path that is a great boon to you, and upon the goal of realization, enlightenment, that is the only reason to come into the body. Sri Krishna said. There's no other reason to come here except to realize God. So how many other reasons are there that people have come here? You could put the question back on him, see. So many other reasons people come here. But if the only reason to come here is for God realization, then you better take all of these reasons and gear them towards freedom. Just like you would take twines of different lengths and locations and bring them all together into one rope and bind yourself to the truth of God realization. So that's how you're going to be able to get rid of some of these very stodgy samskaras that are in the mind, that are pretty much being followed by everyone, called conventional belief. Number one, they don't believe in freedom. Number two, they don't want you to be free if there is freedom. And these are your own people. The blacks try and get free in the 1960s. The other blacks say, you can't do that. The Hindus want to practice nonviolence. Other Hindus come forward and say, you can't do that. So these are your own people that are holding you down. Your parents. I have not come to bring peace, I've come to bring a sword. With that sword I will separate father from son, mother from daughter. Don't tell me that Jesus didn't say the same thing as what the Dharma of India is teaching. Because this Dharma is eternal. It's been the truth that saved people for time out of mind, and nothing else has. Everything else has bound them, even heaven. Well, in the remaining minutes before the break, then let's look at some more of these samskaras in the samskara skandha. This brain has it, for instance, or brains have in it, the leaning toward vanity and attachment to surface beauty. That's right there. So that's not a very positive samskara. Here is one that's mixed. Interesting one. It says, due to suffering in past lifetimes, has developed some power for forbearance. So that's leaning towards something more positive, but it also has a risk in it. You know, that you can forbear and then not move forward to transcend. Oh, I think I'll just forbear this. I'll just be a whipping post. I can do it. So you develop some sort of strength around that, but you never get free from the whipping post. Yoga isn't about pleasure, we know that. And it's not just about practice. It's about freedom from pain. Let this freedom from pain that the human being experiences be known by the name of yoga. Who said that? Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Let this freedom of the senses from their objects and the mind from its pain and so forth, this whole chain of cause and effects, be known as freedom from pain, and let that be known as freedom from yoga. So we want back to this state of unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss. So this person has a chance for that. You see, got a samskara in his mind where he's been able to forbear suffering. That's a good start. Then you see the samskara skandha there. How about this one? The habit of laziness, so is unable to mature. And we showed the one above it, is forgetful due to lack of study in a previous lifetime. So any lifetime you have, make sure you practice your svadhyaya. Study, memorize, recite. the teachings, the wisdom teachings. Study over and over and over again the conventional wisdom. What do you think that you're going to end up with conventional samskaras? Doctors after doctors in the family, lawyers after lawyers in the family. I found doctors have a harder time with spiritual life than lawyers. Because doctors are into the physical body, you see, and have so many risks in that area of life. So many risks that rail against getting free. Because they're seeing it with their very own eyes, how disease seems to be real, how suffering seems to be real, how they think that people are their bodies, and so they're tending their bodies, and their bodies are full of filth and so forth. It's a very hard thing to transcend for a soul like that. So let's just fall back into the conventional run of doctors. Especially our new medicines. Oh, they're much less archaic than our old. We were using leeches to suck blood. Saw yesterday one of these old transfusion pumps. Used to give blood transfusions in the early days. You suck it out with this big pump, put it into the next body. Big huge cylinder, you see. Not your modern dialysis or anything like that. So, lack of study in a previous life means study that will get you somewhere, not study that will run you into the old mundane run of things, superficial run of things. Just gray study of life over and over again. Just so you can what? Have pleasure, property, but never get free of these things? Well, here's one. This samskara has a potential for intellectual acumen. All of a sudden, their intellect is awakened. That's a very positive thing. Intelligence is on the rise now. And that's much better than just conventional knowing and wisdom and lower wisdom. Paravidya. Now you've got a person who's attracted to paravidya, like some of the people I've met recently that are like quantum physicists who are starting to listen, you see, to Vedanta. And therapists who are starting to listen to yoga psychology. Because there's where all the answers are, folks. You're not finding them, and you're running the risk of just practicing them in a conventional society like Western culture over and over again, and they're not getting it. In fact, what they're getting is the convenience and comfort part of it. They're not getting the let's remake ourselves part of it. Cut ourselves in the image part of it. They're not getting that. So you might as well just come out and declare that these things are true, and these things are at least relatively true. Karma, reincarnation, samskaras, vasanas, samskaras based on desires, right? And that's another way of my teacher used to put this. This is basically a lot of these vasana samskaras. They're based in desire. And you never just satisfied that desire in your past lifetime. See, that's the real rub. Is that you think each lifetime that you can satisfy that desire. But it never happens. You're just having that desire again. Yeah, Tantra allows you to use sexuality, even intoxicants, to get to a higher position. But you never do. You're just born again to have more sex and more marijuana. Because it's pleasurable. So pleasure is your meaning of your life. It's the goal of your life. And what follows pleasure? Pain. And what's pain consists of? Disease, old age, death, suffering. What's that make? A samskara that routes you into another lifetime of more of the same. And so that's how it's all connected. Back many lifetimes is connected. What a weave that is. That's a ball of yarn, or wires. We talk about rusty nails, but then you could also talk about this big ball of rubber bands, say. Someone's office, you see. Or you can follow every one of those tendrils. Or just a bunch of wire that's been clumped together and then rusted. So following all these connections is going to be impossible and purposeless too. What you want to do is just take Mother Kali's sword and cut through all of that. Put a match to that ball of yarn. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Can you do that? Do you have the stomach for it? Do you have the capacity for it? Well, some of these samskaras are about capacity, and here's one of them. Has potential for intellectual acumen. I mean, the gurus, the acharyas, the spiritual preceptors and teachers see that in a person. There, I want that one. Intellectual acumen. Give me that one, please. That person will make vast headway. Oh, what about this one who's dancing and singing? Oh, okay, I'll take him. But I want that one with intellectual acumen. That one will reach the goal of human existence quickly. And we want a few of those. Well, there's one that I like to use because I've seen it even in my dogs that I used to own. Drowned in a past lifetime, so was afraid of water. Burnt in the last lifetime, so was afraid of fire. Got eaten by a tiger in the last lifetime, so it's afraid of cats. Whatever the case may be, there's a reason for your fears. And you're to face them off and get rid of them in this lifetime, because when you do, these disappear from this mind complex. The next time you look at it, some of those black spots are gone. You know how Sri Ramakrishna put it, beautiful white piece of paper. Oh, hold it up to light now. Oops, dark specks in it. That's the mind he's talking about. So you know the avatar of the age, the Kali avatar, the Matri avatar, whom we sing about, knows about the presence of samskaras in the human brain. Paramahamsa Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Shri Ramakrishna Pranam Paramahamsa Siddha Yogi Paramahamsa Siddha Yogi Matri Bhakta Yugavatar. A beautiful song one of his disciples wrote about him. Siddha Yogi, perfected yogi. Matri Avatar, the avatar of the Divine Mother, who's shown herself finally in the age. That's why you can look at a picture of Holy Mother now and have samadhi. Just look and have. You don't have to wait. Matri Bhakta, devotee of the Divine Mother, Yoga Avatar, the avatar of this age has come as a manifestation of Divine Mother. His name is Sri Ramakrishna. And he knew about the presence of samskaras in the human mind simply for a simple story like that. You see, hold a white paper up to the mind and see the black little specks in it. See, you thought it was a pure mind. You've got some work to do. So let's go on doing that work, not only after the break, but during the break. Here we'll take 15 minutes. just like that, we're back. And I just scared away all the spirits. Not that there be any here. In this wonderful atmosphere, we're sitting here, puja last night, all the flowers, Hawaiian flora that has been offered here, and incense that's been burned. And so we know what we talk about when we speak about holy company and divinity and samskaras and impressions that have been tailored in our lifetimes to give us these impressions for our future, and to destroy impressions from the past, or to not just destroy impressions of the past, but bring back our good samskaras. Because sometimes the problem with people is that, we're talking at the break about they're forgetful due to lack of study in a previous lifetime. Well, many of us don't study very well. Many good people who forget lots of things. So there are these people who are humble and good and probably would do anything for you, but it doesn't mean they've remembered their true nature yet. Had full realization of the Atman or their Buddha nature, or had Samadhi or Satori or Nirvikalpa or any of these great states that they know of. So they have to entertain that, but the impressions in their mind, I think if you looked at some of the more refined impressions in the mind, as we rounded the corner of some of these charts, you'd find out that there are some scars for Samadhi. That could be a whole third chart here, but we could look at the mind of what are the samskaras in a pure mind. I just gave myself an idea for another chart right there. So what does a mind of a pure-minded soul look like, and if there are any samskaras left in it, what are they? We'd like to know. See, so these would be already, according to Patanjali and so forth, that father of yoga and so forth, that there would be samskaras of samadhi. Now, that really means you're remembering now that you've had that experience before. And this happens even on a diminutive level, you might say, is that we remember things all of a sudden and we smile. Or we feel elated. Or, like I was saying, looking at a picture of Holy Mother or one of the great souls, a painting or so forth, all of a sudden you just have this realization. That's really a connection, lightning swift, back to past lifetimes. These past lifetimes, just like Mahamudra tells you, are in the mind. These worlds are in the mind. These lifetimes that you're living in these worlds, all in the mind. See how if you could get on that track and that understanding, how everything would be paid forward in the moment. They talk about the eternal moment all the time, but you have to entertain this, first as a possibility, and then as a probability, and then a potential in you, and then you bring it forward in that eternal moment. Maybe call it a principle that you remember, that's undying, see. So in that way then, all of a sudden, you're instantaneously vaulted back and transported forward to this samadhi you had. This is why Sri Ramakrishna would go into samadhi at the slightest suggestion. We know that about him. It was described by him and about him by many people, is that he would see like a lion at a zoo. They took him to a zoo and immediately think of Sri Durga and go into samadhi. Well, there are causes for these powerful experiences that come upon the pure-minded. And you too have had these experiences most likely. And how much rust has gotten in the way of your memory of that, the rust of the memory, see, that would be a whole part too you could talk about, smriti hetu. That is, they call it smriti hetu because it's that everything is if everything is a manifestation of the mind, then the memory has a huge part to play in that, doesn't it? Say memory or lack thereof, forgetfulness, as this samskara says there, see, is forgetful due to lack of study in a previous life. So study of what? Maybe not just books, study of their own mind, study of meditation, study of the scriptures, study of their guru, study of holy company, all sorts of these things they need to spend time with, so it cements them into the moment, the eternal moment. Right now it's not the eternal moment, it's a series of moments. And this is actually called one of the doorways, 6 doorways to yoga, is putting together moments in time. And these would be moments at a very powerful level of understanding that would coalesce into one eternal moment. That's called a realization, because sort of like when you have deep sleep, everything is one, right? It's not one when you're dreaming, and it's certainly not one here. Variation is the name of the game. Vibration, variation, variegation. It's all diverse and profuse and everything. But when you're in deep sleep, one. So much like that, when you're in realization, or you have all these moments of a past lifetime, or even in this lifetime, you remember all the things that happened to you and they all come together in a sattvic moment, that's a quick samadhi. It's a spontaneous moment of realization. And that may span out into 60 moments, a full minute of samadhi, and you'll be weeping. And you'll, if you have enough of those kinds of experiences, then you'll say, next time I have this, I swear I'm going to remember this. But you can't, you see. What was that feeling I had when I just looked at the picture of Holy Mother, and for a minute I was weeping, and I was just so in myself and united, see. But then I felt it start to wane, you see. It's going away, I don't want it to go away. It's sort of like having a beautiful dream that you want to call back. But it begins to dissipate, the edges, around the edges, like a tone in the air starts to deteriorate, you see. An echo in a canyon, it's further and further away. So some of this around the idea of these more positive samskaras that can happen as the mind gets more refined. For instance, here's one, is kind and generous. Then then here's one that's problematic. Born with physical problems that worsen as age sets in. I was talking about early onset. So people, young kids getting diseases. And so for what is that? So they're young, why should they be getting diseases? God cursed them. Oh, the devil's in them. No, I don't think I'll believe that anymore. That's a samskara out of mundane human convention, religious style. Fundamentalism, I'm not entertaining that anymore, that's ridiculous. So then it has to be karma, it has to be samskaras, and it has to be a past lifetime connected to it. And desires these kids had, or these souls had, we should call them at this point, and things that they engaged in that they shouldn't have, or in the case, things they engaged in that they should have, that they did. And so they're ending up with these positive samskaras and these pure minds. So your child's born to you like the avatars as children, the great incarnations. You see, parents can't believe them. It's not just what happened to the man that he was born blind, who caused that, and that's one side of it. It's a negative samskara. Karma is at the root of that, not the fault of the parents. But on the other side, you have the same kind of teaching, is that what happened that this person was born so perfect? See the beauty of it. So you have to examine, not only by contrast of a negative samskara and a mixed samskara in between is going to explain a lot to you, but a positive samskara and why these souls are born. And you'll eventually be getting rid of these conventional ways of thinking that are telling you that God blessed one and cursed another. That's going to be untenable and unacceptable. Bullshit. See, that's not acceptable anymore to me. That means there would be some sort of God who's partial to one soul. And I wouldn't want to worship a God like that. I'm quoting Swami Vivekananda here. I would not worship a God proposed to me like that. Somebody who would curse one and bless another. Has to be equal in all. And that's Samadarshitvam, that's one of his favorite qualities, the same Atman in all beings, sinner or saint or worldly in between. Human beings, ancestors, and God, demigods and gods, same Atman in all. So then what are the propensities in those? What are the propensities in those minds that hold the same Atman as their common ground? Then the whole thing begins to lift off from sin and damnation, or eternal hellfires, or eventually even just karma, because karma is not going to explain the ultimate. Good karma is not going to explain the pure soul, you see. No, you can't explain the pure soul by good karma. It's gone beyond the gold chain and the iron chain. We know that, we hear that in the teachings of India. So a pure soul is going to have to be defined by a completely different measure, almost an invisible ruler there. So you'd have to ask what kind of samskaras are there, if any, because there must be some, because it came back into the body, and it didn't have to, you see. So this gets into a whole nother beautifully considered and explained level of the art of samskaras. So we don't want to just sit here and harp again about bad karma and negativities. Would begin to sound too much like the fundamentalists. And we may run the risk of causing you to think that these things are real, that people's sufferings, their mistakes, their errors, their deaths, their rebirths are all real. No, that's not playing. That's playing back into the hands of the dualists, the fundamentalists. We want them to know that non-duality is the only real, final, conclusive truth, and that would be explaining all one Atman equal in all beings. So how is the variegation happening here? These varieties that are coming about has to be. Then we have to back off to karma, the actions people did in their lifetimes. If we study the actions that they did in this lifetime and we see how they're suffering, you're talking about a person who's watching. You're talking about a person who's concerned about your welfare and is watching you and saying, "Oh, there, I see. Oh, that went by very fast for you, didn't it? But I saw it. That's why you're suffering." But if you say that, someone will say, "How dare you?" See, Westerners are arrogant. "How dare you say that to me? You don't know anything, I know better. But I thought you took me as your guru. You wanted me to observe. I'm leaving." See? So they'll be quick to turn their back on the truth. But you were watching, you see, because you had reached a certain level of neutralization of samskaras and karmas. You were feeling fine. For years you were feeling fine. They can't tell you anything. They're thinking I can't tell them something. Exactly, you can't tell me anything is the real truth here. Because I've been sitting in a state like this, for decades. And feeling fine, thank you very much. So then you had me observe your spiritual life and your karma, and something happened that caused you to suffer, and you didn't expect me to come forward and point it out to you. And when I did point it out to you, you were arrogant and rejected it. There's something wrong, see here. So this is true on both sides of the fence. We're saying negative samskaras and positive samskaras. We have to look at both these. We're here to explore. And when we explore, none of us is saying that we know anything this side of the curtain of Maya. We're all blind. We're all purblind, made purblind by Maya. We don't know anything. But if we explore, we come to know that we know. See, that's how we were talking about it at the break. It's the exploration, called holy company in this particular tradition. It's the exploration that causes you to remember, yes, that's true. See, that is the truth, I remember it. Why do I remember it? Because I just sat with holy company for 3 hours, and we talked about it. And in that 3 hours, we didn't talk about anything mundane. We didn't talk about anything that had to do with our ancestors, unless it's how we fell into their spell and got born from them again and again. And therefore we outlined what a samskara is. and why it drags us back, and what made it, desires, and why we did the desires, and what karma it formed in us. And, oh, guess what? The finger's pointing at me. I did it. No God, no devil did it. My ancestors aren't even blamable, because they're just living lives of ignorance in rounds of birth and death called samsaras. The blame lies with them for their own kulyana, as we say in a way. See, it's their own doing. But for me, it has to lie with me for my doing. And so the study of this then becomes a matter of the triple gem, ayu punya jnana. Basically, you find a teacher, and you get a spiritual life, you attend holy company, and you get wisdom, jnanam. When that happens, then you can hopefully turn and help others. As the Holy Mother said, now that you've discovered Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in this age, and you're on your way to full enlightenment in him under his auspice, can't you turn and help others on your way? That's how she put it, you see. So all of this has to do with this positive turn we're looking at. This last one I told you about wasn't so positive, but it does explain what we were talking about earlier, that we've just known people that have just passed away from cancer and heart attacks, or have had heart attacks. Every one of us is hearing about this more and more in our lives. And so we ought to know where the causes of these things are coming from. See, you can demur so far as to just say, well, their time has come. All right, so that's some statement that's probably going to satisfy everyone. Oh, okay. See, their time has come. But without looking into time and actions in time done, then you don't know why their time has come. And you're not going to know why your time has come, and what to do when it does come. And better yet, what to do before it comes. Because you can pre-think this process. When you explore something in the Dharma, you're looking back in time, and you're truncating anything that's going to happen in the future, as far as anything negative goes. You're destroying, by thinking positively in the atmosphere of holy company about your negative samskaras, you're destroying them at the root. Better than any other thing you can do if you follow it up with sadhana. You're also truncating anything that's going to happen in the future. So this is why the three teachings, the three kinds of karma, are a great teaching. Agami, prarabdha, and sanchita, sanchita, prarabdha, and agami, if you put them in order, past, present, and future. Trikaladarshi, I see the three phases of time. So my past karma, I'm expunging that. The prarabdha karma, I'm living it. The future karma, I'm truncating it. I'm neutralizing it. So that's what you have to be able to say about time. So if you say his time has come and death, that's not very deep. It might satisfy people on a surface level to walk away without a guilty conscience, or maybe allay their fears. But it's not deep enough for the thinker who is going to die of a heart attack and of cancer themselves one day. And you have to face off death. See, when death comes, I'll open up my heart, show him the seed that Mother Kali gave me. There's one song in India. It grew into a great tree in there. I don't believe in death anymore. I'll go have a cup of tea with death, like Yama did in the Kena Upanishad. Katha Upanishad. So, death is my friend. Death takes me out of an aged body. Death transports me into the next level of my existence. Death, him friend. The Dalai Lama told me that on stage one day when we were at Honolulu in the Waikiki Shell, and I was playing music before his talk. He said, "We Tibetans look forward to the time of our death." A little bit too serious for me before I sat down and played a nice bhajan for people, but the point got through. So, let's look then at some facts about samskaras because this chart has taken up the whole class and I didn't intend it to, but we are pretty much reading the Riot Act on this unknown word in the English language called samskara, which is a mental impression created from past lifetimes as well as this lifetime. Past, present, and what it will do in the future if it's not guarded against or utilized in a positive way. We can get to pure minds if we utilize our samskaras, all of them. Negative samskaras can give you more impetus than positive ones can, because they scare the bejesus out of you. When you realize their presence, sort of like knowing that you live in a network of caves, but there's a bear in one of them. See? You never met him, because there's so many caves, but he's in there. So you're living in secret fear of that, meeting that critter one day, you see. So your mind has those kinds of bugaboos, those bugbears in there. And you need to face them off. But most people can't even find them, and most of the others don't want to. So you see the problem here. They don't want to face off with their negativities. When they do, they can't find them. So they have to find a teacher. Then the teacher tells them where they are, and they betray the teacher. What can you do for people like this in this age? What can be done? Sri Ramakrishna said, my eyes have become red, blowing on the waning coals of your spiritual life. So, see, it's got a chance. There's a spark. It's going out. Blow harder. You see. Come on, you can do it this lifetime. I don't want to have to come back again. So my eyes have become red, blowing on the waning coals of your spiritual life, because there's so much smoke you're throwing up into the avatar's eyes. He's stinging, turning red. Give the guy a break. Realize yourself. Come on, it's not that hard. See? Look at the picture of Holy Mother and be free, if that's what it takes. Pay it all forward. So here's some facts about samskaras to end this talk about samskaras. They are formed due to egoic, desire-based actions in past lifetimes. If there's any doubt, I've noted these bullet points for you so that we know what a samskara is and we can begin contemplating it. 2, they lie dormant, unnoticed, and are hard to detect and neutralize. Pretty much just said that. 3, they operate in tandem with time, karma, and life's occurrences. That would be called conditionings in Buddhism, the 12 Nidana teaching, that over 3 lifetimes, these things that you did in the first life get conditioned by other things that you do in this lifetime and will do in the next lifetime. That's a very beautiful teaching, the 3 lifetime teaching of the 12 links, they're called, of a chain. See, that condition people's lives. So that's pretty much what's being mentioned here. These samskaras operate in tandem with time, karma, and life's occurrences. Life's occurrences are what are conditioning those samskaras even right now. If you're sitting here listening to me, you hear the words coming out of my mouth, then a good samskara is forming. 3 hours, once a week, on a lifetime of Sundays, you sat and listened to this, good samskaras are forming. How can you forget that in a next lifetime or in your old age? I sat and listened to the Dharma for hours and hours in my lifetime. You certainly don't want to say that and say, that didn't do anything for me. It didn't work, you see. If it didn't, it's your fault. So make it work for you. They influence present life behavior for better or for worse. They can congeal into a deeper complex if not dissolved. What's that called? Samskara skandha. What's the metaphor for it? A bucket of rusty nails. They can only be removed by mental, spiritual purification. All right, so get busy and do your mind's purification exercises, all the way up through meditation, study of the scriptures, don't be forgetful, and so forth and so on. And do it every day until the mind obeys you. And it goes to death consciously. It's not afraid of death. It doesn't believe in death when it goes to death. It has a cup of tea with death along the way. Oh, would you deposit me there, please? I'm going to Ramakrishna Loka. They often remain in residual form until samadhi occurs. So there's residue. And we know this is true also of the positive samskaras in great souls. They have residues. There's a teaching I used to give and I used to get from my teachers is that if a great soul passes and wants to come back quickly, it'll hold on to one desire on purpose. See? Like, I love chocolate ice cream. See? We laugh half jokingly about Swami Vivekananda. He loved chocolate ice cream, so they would bring him back to the table after dinner because he'd want to leave because all the people at the table were what? Talking about this junk, you see. Even with him present, they were talking about this nonsense in their lives. He might have just given a parlor talk, and they're still talking about this nonsense, you see. So he'd leave as soon as dinner was over. You know, and, oh, Swamiji, there's chocolate ice cream. He'd come right back. So they knew how to bind him to the dinner table. So, you know, how do you get a soul to come back, or how does a soul get himself to come back when freedom is overwhelmingly superior and desirable to this kind of bondage in the body that you're having right now, even in a good life? You hold on to one little desire. So that's what is being said here in effect, you see. They often remain in residual form until samadhi occurs. That's the highest samadhi. They cause the soul's transmigration in continuous cycles. So what causes reincarnation? There's people who don't even believe in it. But if you believe in it, they don't know what it is. They don't know how it works. So here it is, you see. It's samskaras that cause reincarnation. What causes them? Actions, good, bad, and mixed. What causes those? My desires. Every great teacher will tell you that. Desires at the root of everything here. And as soon as it's over, that's your last lifetime. As soon as you have no more desires for this, that's your last lifetime. Holy Mother said it point blank to us. So, satisfy your desires, she said. Fulfill them in the Dharma. It's the best way to do it. And be done with them. She wasn't saying pull them out by the roots, renounce the world. She's a middle path teacher. I mean, if you could do it, she would like it. If you renounced the world, she'd love to see the monks get free. But since most people can't do that, don't have the wherewithal or the destiny or the karma or the strength or the capacity or even the desire to do that, then satisfy them in the Dharma, fulfill them over time. And that's the middle way. Finally, these samskaras dictate all the details of the next life's manifestation. So in these few bullet points, you notice what was talked about? The three phases of time, basically. How samskaras are in the past, how they work into the present, how they're formed in the present, conditioned more, and turn into your future lifetime. This is the three phases of time. Don't forget that along with past, present, and future is the eternal moment that transcends all three. Time is illusory, ultimately. So is space. So is suffering. So is death. And here's the soul that knows it, looking at it all. The seer looking at the seen, and the unseen below it, and the obscene below that. Knows the whole story, free of samskaras. And we have to listen to those souls. So final quote with this, and this takes us into this teaching on Sankalpa. Sri Ramakrishna says humorously, the son of a king was fond of playing with his royal playmates. One day, as they were playing swords, the prince suddenly said, I want to play a new game. I'll lay down, and all of you must beat me over the back with these cloths and robes, making a swishing sound as you do so, unquote. You see, he says, the last lifetime the prince had been the son of a washerman. So you can see, all his lifetime, he was used as a stone, as it were, to the washerman used his back to dry these clothes. You see, he was the son of a washerman. So he heard the swishing sound of the clothes coming, making these impressions on his back. It was painful, it was pleasurable, whatever the case, it was probably both and mixed. So he got used to these sounds and to this feeling, and he did that his whole life, and it caused the samskara of being a washerman's son. For years. For a lifetime. Maybe he became a washerman and his son was a washerman, and he did the same to his son, you see. So, you see, Sri Ramakrishna is just talking about mental impressions in the mind from past lifetimes, and why the prince, who got born in a better body, through some good karma of his own, all of a sudden had a samskara come back on him when he was playing in the royal chambers. And his father was probably horrified. No, don't play that game, son. I mean, can't you imagine it? People, children, all of a sudden showing musical aptitude or good with poetry, and the father wants them to be successful. Oh, don't do that. Don't do poetry. Can't make a living at that. Mundane human convention kicks in. So you can't follow your good samskaras, even if you wanted to in this world. I was fortunate. My father saw musical talent in most of us kids, got us lessons. See? You're going to play music. He had the good sense and the intelligence to follow through on that. And didn't force anything else on us, because he himself had been, minored in piano, at the same time had gone into health. So he had to be a health inspector to make his living, visiting places where cigarette butts were found in cans of food, and inspecting things, what was going on, going to the Indian reservations and seeing how they were being treated. So he had had a lifetime like this, you see. So he didn't want his kids to have anything to do with that. His bosses had stole his good work on several occasions. Stole it. Erased his name off it, put their own name. That's how mundane human convention operates. That's how the ancestors operate. Greedy, selfish, out for their own good. Egos, out for their own good only. Worse than evil people, those kinds of souls. Because the evil people at least are doing it without having to veil it. So you see here, then, the king's not going to want his young child to play, let's play washerman. You're a prince. Pick up your sword, please, you see. And let's get the rest of the kids out of here. Let's get on with life. So, teachings about samskaras go very deep, make up a samskara, but you see here, Sri Ramakrishna says, you see, in a past lifetime, he had been the son of a washerman, and so all of this has to do with mental projection. So now he was projecting the life of a prince. Before he had been projecting the life of a washerman's son and so forth. So he's doing his soul's evolution, as it were, through the various worlds, into various bodies, being born in different wombs. And that's what's going on, and probably how we would segue into the teaching about sankalpa, which also has to play very much into this realm of samskara and vasanas, desires. We can show you the desires one as well, but this is an old war horse, although it has gotten a colorized version now. Like I said, Lord Vashishta, thousands of years back, has said this: sankalpic desire at three levels, the world, the mind, and the intellect, when utilized by an unillumined mind, is a detrimental force at the root of all suffering. It is like a rutting elephant whose trunk is the tendency of selfish grasping, and who goes about spraying the world with water of surface enjoyments. Only the sharp arrow of Atmagyan, that is, knowledge of the true self, can bring this lumbering beast to its knees so it can be bound by the ropes of masterful mind control. He's telling the young Lord Ram, the teenage Ram, about this teaching of sankalpa. Sankalpa means mental projection out of desire. And he says it happens on the level of three levels. That is, the level of the world, mind, and intellect. Look at that really quickly. The world, sankalpa, manifests as the desire for foods, for sense objects, for pleasures, and for possessions. Mundane human convention and its desires. If you take sankalpa to the level of the mind, its desire for mental projection, like worlds, heavens, excitements, and distractions, then it gets collective on you. It goes from individual, vyasti, to collective, samasti. And so the mind has stepped from its own little concerns to its own little concerns for a wider spectrum, basically. You might as well be calling this humans and ancestors, or earth and heaven, if you wish. Which is why when we point out the teaching of heaven in Vedanta, we want to make sure that we're talking about this heaven, not this heaven. I hope you get the distinction there. This heaven is love of God, higher heaven. This heaven is love of enjoyments with your ancestors, lower heaven. That's called the navel, where birth takes place, where food's digested. Get the gist? Food, enjoyments, taste, so forth. This level is love for God, where you forget about food, or your food is now wisdom. Oh Lord, tell me the truth. Speak to me. See? Fill my ears with nourishment that will be the best thing for my soul. My body is no longer an issue. See? So this is projection at the level of the mind, and we want to make sure we know that we're talking about a lower heaven here. And from what I heard about conventional heaven in Christianity when I grew up, I knew immediately that that wasn't my goal. And when I heard Vedanta spoke by my teacher, and he talked about the heart chakra, and that's being heaven where love of God is the main heaven. So then, of course, I accepted that. So you might put that even in the teaching of Christianity, you see. In the Christian tradition, there are people who are loving God truly, and there are people who are feigning love for God. We know that because we've seen people selling heaven. For instance, I won't go into any names here. It happens in every religious tradition that people are compromising the truth and trying to make money off of religion and so forth, which it should have never happened. Should never venture that direction. Should leave it pure and perfect as it is. Then it won't fall and betray people by the hundreds and thousands. Then maybe you won't have the problem of people looking for another religion. See? And then maybe you might have the ultimate solution of people realizing that all religions are paths to God. What about that? That's universalism. I can give you a little bit of preface or a little bit of preview. That's going to be the first Hawaii series I'm going to talk about next year, here in this room. It's about Sri Ramakrishna and universality. I'll give a retreat on that. So the true religions of the age, how all religions are seen as pathways to what you might want to call Almighty Father, what someone else might want to call Brahman, what someone else might want to call Allah, what somebody else want to call Buddha nature, and what somebody else might want to call emptiness, or non-existence. Each due to their own preference, predilection, and understanding. So the third level of sankalpa then, Vasishtha says, the intellect. That's desire for attainments. So when you have foods, enjoyments, and all that, then you have earths, heavens, and hells, and so forth, and all of this that you can play in. Then you're going to want to have attainments in them. You're going to want to have pride of accomplishment. Arrogance will be one of the results of that, and so forth that we've been talking about. So basically, you're just going around in this loop of sankalpa. The three lower chakras pretty much define this. So the desire for power, for manipulation over others, for pride and for glory, vainglory, the Tantrists call it, by chitra, there's varieties, and then vainglory they call that. So basically it's going around in this samskaric loop. You got the varieties, then you've got these manipulations going on, and you see some of the words here over in the middle. for sankalpa that you might want to check against your own vocabulary. Hope, brooding, seeking, owning, coveting, enjoying, striving for, accumulating, clinging to, not sharing, taking as real the unreal, conceiving, thinking, imagining, creating, projecting, fantasizing. All of these are movements or forms of sankalpa. What to do with that? Stop. Like deep sleep tonight. Stop. Like your good meditation the other day. Stop. Like death. Like the great death. The death of your ego. That's the small death. So stop the mind from thinking, from imagining, from projecting, from fantasizing, from conceiving, from all these things that it engages in at this level. I'm not saying when you say something like seeking, we're talking about seeking sankalpa style. We're not talking about seeking God, so don't get confused. We talk about conceiving, we're talking about conceiving things for my own selfish designs. We're not talking about conceiving how God fashioned the universe. So how God does its sankalpa, that is God's mind, Mahat, or the Trinity. Oops, I better sing that. I did that. Okay, so the Trinity, how it conceives of things, you see. No, that's different. This is all on the level of sankalpa that's a positive evil, and can be. So that's the chart. And here's one last quote on it. For mastery over sankalpa and vikalpa, practice asamvedana. Non-receptivity to all desire. So even before your desires are completely fulfilled, you can have a foreknowledge or a preconception is that you're going to satisfy this desire, but you actually are already tired of it. You ever got that feeling, or you've arrived at that kind of understanding? Oh yes, I'll go do this because I desire it, but it's not really going to fulfill me anyway. I'm just going to do it to get it out of the way. And so this is kind of maybe the early signs of asamvedana in you. And that can reach very deeply up till, I could live another lifetime, not just enjoy another object or another meal, and because I desire it, but I could live another lifetime because I desire it, but I'm not really going to enjoy it that much. It's going to be just like this lifetime. So you can use asamvedana in a way that puts a stop to all desires. Early on, see. Even if your body goes through the motions, you can withdraw your consciousness from that. Like the body has its desires, okay, let it do that, but I don't have any. The mind has its desires, let it do that, but I really don't have any. All the time you're causing this distinction to be made between the Atman and the Anatman, between the true self and the false self, between the Purusha and the ego. That's the wheat and the chaff. And that's necessary for a spiritual life. Nobody gets into a true spiritual life without that discrimination. Don't care whether you're a bhakta, a meditator, or a karma yogi. Nobody gets into a true spiritual life without making that separation between the real and the unreal. Which is why Vedanta focuses on that, emphasizes that at the very beginning. Are you ready to be a Vedantist, the way it's been outlined? The new dispensation of Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda has brought to the West. Are you ready for that? Let me see your discrimination then. Let me see that you've put a hold on the mind sankalpas, and now every sankalpa you have is for enlightenment. Every samskara you're working for is towards positive enlightenment for yourself and for all the beings. Up until a place where you can say, I want to save all sentient beings. Not from suffering, you'll never do that. You want to convince them that they're always free. That's the strange thing. I mean, Sufis have a nice saying, enlightened soul is like a man sitting next to the river trying to sell water to you. It's like sitting next to the river, you want this water? I'll bottle it and sell it. You can walk up and drink it yourself, you see. So that's how futile it is, in a way. But people aren't doing it. So they need someone to tell you, this water's for sale, this water can be drunk, you can do it, have some. Maybe if I put a price on it, then you'll take some, which is kind of the condition today with what's going on out there. So they have to pay for it in order to value it. Money, it just shows how money has gotten into every fiber of the mind. And of course, it's going to be behind all three kinds of sankalpa. It's going to be one of the main elements in it. All right, so I'm glad that was quick. Did I read it all? Yeah. Okay, so that chart was done completely. Let's look at desire in the remaining minutes. Of all the 300 and more charts that we have, this could be the candidate for one of the favorites. We're going to probably have some sort of a conference or concurrence about what are the top 10 charts of all Babaji's 300 and so charts, and see which ones people pick. It'll be kind of fun. This one is going to rise to the top for sure, because it's good in many ways. It shows you the impossible ways to try and fulfill your desires up this left-hand side, and the legitimate ways to fulfill desires. It makes a clear distinction between those. On the other side here, it shows how everything's a cyclic wheel, and that you get off on one wheel and you get onto the other. Let's start with that. Mundane human convention, if we went back to this chart again, is right there in that middle chart. It's birth and ignorance. It's avidya. It's Maya's twin wheel of transmigration. One's going worldly, the other's going pseudo-religion. Conventional religion. So you're either, going to hell, or you follow religion and you fake it. Or you follow religion that's not really true religion. And so this is the twin wheel of Maya's transmigration. Maya operates via the movement of simultaneously alternating and counteractive cycles. So that's why people don't see Maya, because it's always sleight of hand on you. It's pulling the wool over your eyes all the time. You think you've gotten out of one part of it, and you fall into the other, and it's still Maya. And this is why this is a good teaching, because people think that they get to heaven and they're out of Maya. But the definition of Maya is name and form. Don't you still have names and forms if you're an angel? And if you're in heaven, isn't there still worlds? And it doesn't matter how intellectual you get, you still have names and forms and worlds. So that's all Maya. The only distinction that you can make as a devotee is that when you get to Mahamaya, you realize that the Mother underlies it all. That the Divine Mother of the Universe, these are her worlds. At that time, you're giving away everything to her. See? It's called sacrifice. Saranagata dinarta paritrana parane sarva shakti hare devi narayani namostute. I bow to you, Divine Mother of the Universe, and surrender and take refuge in the Sharanagata. And so those statements in the scriptures describe that really well. So this is why this wheels of Maya going like this, counteracting each other, are very difficult to get to. This conventional one starts birth and ignorance. Growth in selfishness. Remember we were just saying about if you go and do acts and you have some scars in the mind, what do you expect? Those acts don't bring ripe fruits, or delayed fruits, or mixed fruits, or harmful fruits, or something you did that was bad turns good, and that confuses you even more, because you think, oh, maybe I should just do bad and get good. So you do something good and a bad thing happens. You do something bad and a good thing happens. So this is Maya in its counteractive cycles. And most people with any kind of real intelligence will say, I think I'll watch this for a while and back off. See? But other people will just plunder. Blunder. Yeah, they'll plunder, but they'll blunder into these acts. And just do unthought acts all the time. So this is what's happening in this. Growth in selfishness is not a good thing. So we're telling our children you're growing. It's really not ultimately true. Non-duality, the soul doesn't grow. It's full all the time. It's fully matured all the time. So the body's growing, you could say that much. And you're not the body should be added into that teaching. But basically, if you're growing in selfishness, if you haven't been told the truth, and you've been geared just to be a worldly person like your parents and like your ancestors, and like everyone else out there, then they're selfish, you're selfish, and you're growing in selfishness. That's not a good thing. Selflessness is a good thing. And so if you can grow in selflessness, that will remove the samskaras of selfishness from you. This is why people never get rid of their selfishness. They can even feign like they've gotten rid of it. They want you to think they're selfless when they're really selfish. You look into yourself in your meditation, I'm still selfish. So what can I do not to be selfish? So you've got a real sincere desire to be selfless. So that's the first sign of somebody who isn't under the press of selfish people like the ancestors. They really want sincerely to be selfless. They're courting freedom at that very moment. That's their lifetime of awakening. And it'll be true of other qualities too. So here, this is usually what's happening in this wheel. See, you're born in ignorance and you grow in selfishness. Not a good thing. Next, life lived in delusion. What's the delusion? World is real. My body's the self. Riches are the aim of human life. We went through it last week. It's called mental postures that bind. Remember that chart? With the courtesan turning away from the Buddha? It's the mental postures that bind. We went through all of those worldly stances and perspectives. Manasanas, mental impressions, last week on that chart. So this is basically what's being explained here. They're living life in delusion with thoughts in their mind that aren't worthy, aren't noble, and aren't true. That ends in death and doubt and fear. Because they can pretend all the way, they can pretend all they want up until the moment of death. See? And actually, like Manas falling back in the well over and over again, and Lord Brahma and Lord Vashishta watching him in that story in Yoga Vashishta, the soul will come to death, and if they're hit by a bus, they say, you know, the big thing is like on the movies, people walk out in the street, see, they want to really shock you. That's how quick death can come to you. So for that person, that's the most unfortunate person, because they don't have time to think about their death. So they're just going to be born again, and they're going to die again. But for the person who comes aware of how much doubt they have and how much fear they have at the end of their life before they die, that's a more fortunate person, because they'll have time to think about this and suffer it. This is why euthanasia is probably not a good thing in most cases. You want people to suffer. What's this kid glove thing about? Oh, let's take all your suffering away. Suffering is, you can't do that first. Suffering is the first noble truth. Listen to the Buddha, for God's sake, or for non-God's sake, whatever the case may be. So you can't take it away from the first place. The second place is that Krishna says in the Gita, right next to Lord Buddha, that suffering is better for you than pleasure. What is pleasurable in the beginning turns sour at the end. You don't want that. What's painful at the beginning turns blissful at the end. That's what you want. Painful at the beginning, you see. So if you have ignorance and you're on this wheel, or you're under the press of samskalpa, or you have a bunch of samskaras in your mind, then what you need to do is see them and think about them. Make a decision here. How many more lives of ignorance can I bear, right? Shukir vashana karo arkadi, Shukir vashana karo arkadi, Taji anyobo, kali kalibo, annabo janamo jadin, Shukir vashana karo arkadi, Shukir vashana karo arkadi. lives of ignorance can I bear? How many more lives of suffering? How many more times of bearing suffering for 9 months and 9 days in the mother's womb? How many more of those do I have to bear? He sings in this song, Kamalakanta. So he's asking the mother, you see. So he's come to this place where he's questioning this, and he's saying, actually, I don't want to go through that anymore. I want to breathe the free air of heights, see, and be free. So in that way then, how is he going to do that? He's going to have his first death, you see, and have his first conscious death, as the Tibetan Buddhists say. So that's a good thing, we're saying. So what this usually ends in for most people is the beginnings of a moral life. See this portal here? You've gone around this inner cycle, and it's all filled with desire. As base and gross of desires as you can possibly have, as many of them as you possibly can have. You're saturated with the atmosphere of desire, like people are out there. Their life is, where's my next thing? I want to desire that. I want this. Give me that. So then this kind of little halt, stop, let's take a look at this. And starts in moral life, and you think, oh, now I'm free. I've got religion. He's got religion. So let's examine that. Moral life, then birth in heaven or on earth. Then attachment, then conventional religion, then observance of ethics, then mundane habitual life, then attachment to pleasure, and then birth in heaven on earth again. So this wheel is this chakra. We just said that earlier. Around and around this lower heaven you go with your ancestors. And many great souls have pointed this out. Buddha being the most prominent among them, probably. He put his mind specifically on piercing through the rebirth with your ancestors problem, because that's why Vedas had fallen in that time, and Buddhism had to come along, bring out the real thread of India's teaching, this radical non-dual truth. So basically, he came along and said, well, here's the problem right here, sort of like Krishnamurti looking at the Hindus in the 60s and saying, you know, you have 50,000 gods here, what's wrong with you? And you're all worshipping in different temples, and none of you can agree. Sri Ramakrishna even said that. I went to one village, and they said, here, look at this. Oh, you worship Krishna, how nice, he said. Keep doing that, that's good. Went to another village a couple miles away. They said, look at this. Oh, you worship Krishna, just like that other village. No, they don't worship the real Krishna. We worship the real Krishna. So 2 miles apart in 2 different villages, they're worshiping Krishna. And each one of them thought that their Krishna was the right Krishna to worship, you see. So we can't go on criticizing Christianity for worshiping only Jesus when in our own religion this is going on all the time. Nobody can agree. Nobody can open up. They're all selfish. You just said that. So you're carrying, if you allow me to say, you're carrying the samskaras of selfishness from this inner wheel to this outer wheel now. And now it's taken on the manifestation of religion. It's gotten into your very religion, your selfishness. You can see then how these 2 wheels, counteracting each other and going in different directions, are not freedom at all. And if you want to explain it in terms of the Kundalini system, they're all transmigration. It's all transmigration in 3 centers, without knowing anything higher. Well, something higher comes when, and it's put in terms of words here, Burloka is earth, Bhuvarloka is the intermediary regions, and Swarloka is lower heaven. Swarloka has a little opening there. See, worlds of rebirth are all here. We said that. Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. May there be peace there, and good luck with that, we could add. Then worlds of rebirth pierce through there to worlds of no rebirth. That was easy, wasn't it? Y'all follow me there? Are we there? So somehow you get through this And in Kundalini speak, this is called Rudra Granthi. No, I'm sorry, it's called Vishnu Granthi. Brahma Granthi was down here. Vishnu Granthi is here. It's very hard to pierce through that membrane, that samskaric, if you hear me what I'm saying here, that samskaric impression in the minds of the humans and ancestors, very hard to pierce through that and kill that samskara so that they can get into the worlds of no rebirth. Very difficult to penetrate that membrane. It's like a scar tissue, you see, that's been thickened and thickened by brooding and fear and all these things we just studied in the samskaric charts. You can look back on them and make sense out of it for yourself by contemplating them, by seeing it. Look upon this chart as the face of Holy Mother, see? And you're getting your first glimpse of her as she really is. Sit there and wonder. Put it together, make the connections, do away with the rust. And don't let your consciousness have corrosion ever again. Galvanize it, as we've been saying. Make it galvanized steel, no rust. So when you penetrate here, and we have just enough probably time, maybe not, maybe we'll have to take this up next Sunday, but you can see how these worlds of no rebirth kick in, and there are two wheels there that signify also the lack of full realization. They're gradated. One of them is called, this is called Mahamaya's twin wheel of transmigration. Here you had Mayas, and they're this ground on by your own delusion, and by the delusion of all those people all those beings that occupy these three lower worlds. This grinds on by their karma. Has nothing to do with Mother's will. There's no God here. Here, all of a sudden, you find Mahamaya's more at the control of it. She's guiding. And people are beginning to realize that she was even guiding this if they would wake up to her. Now they're waking up to her. And so the first thing they're going to see here is this first wheel called Dharma. Now, you can see Maharloka, Janaloka, Taparloka, and Brahmaloka are the four upper worlds, and these three are the lower worlds. So when you say Bhurbhuva Swaha, you're bringing peace to the outer, the inner, and or let's call it the gross, the subtle, and the causal. Now you're in a world of no rebirth, and you're having beings who are very, very high in their realization of what's going on. These worlds are the worlds of no return. Krishna talks about these, calls them the sunlit worlds in the Gita. These are the moonlit worlds. By the moonlit worlds, souls return, Krishna says. I'm quoting him directly. By the sunlit path they go never to return again, quote directly. So they still have name and form here, and it's not the formless Brahman or the emptiness of Buddha nature or any of that, where everything goes away and everything is just the radiance of your own original mind, as Mahamudra might call it. But here you have some very beautiful play going on, some very beautiful sport. You say here it's Maya and here it's Leela. Would be a sort of a nice way of putting it. Leela is sport. Well, we have run out of time, I'm aware, in a few minutes, and you can see here that if you were on this wheel and you got through Svarloka and you penetrated into the worlds of no rebirth, then Dharma and Sadhana would be these two cycles. I can probably leave you with that, and we can take this up next Sunday. Sorry to leave you hanging like that, but at least you know that you've penetrated through the Vishnu Granthi. And now you can be happy that you've arrived at the worlds of no rebirth. Now just proceed as if you are there and have realized that the soul is never reborn. It's all a dream. But the dream seems real as long as your ignorance is real. And as soon as your ignorance is seen to be unreal, all of a sudden the dream gets very, very beautiful. Sri Ramakrishna said, if you're going to be reborn, make sure that each rebirth is in a higher and higher and better state. more realized and more realized. So it's called krama mukti. You realize the truth by stages. And any kind of mukti has nothing to do with these worlds, unless some souls have managed to extricate themselves from it, or are striving, like we just said. I'm selfish, I wish I was selfless. Look at that being, they're so pure and perfect, I wish I were like them. When those kinds of thoughts arise in a person like that, then you know they have the beginnings of sincerity in them. Before that, selfishness is all insincerity, which was the one thing Sri Ramakrishna would not allow in his devotees. He said he could bear everything, even errors and evils in them, but not insincerity. So that's a very important point to see here, and a good note to end on, as bittersweet as it might be. So we have to check ourselves, examine our own consciousness like Eskimos would examine snow conditions every day, and rise to that level of power that is yogic power, the fire of yoga, that can just disintegrate, what to speak of, dissolve the rust off of our old lives and samskaras, disintegrate any barriers in our way towards realization of this truth in this very life. So here, let's end with a chant. Om Sato, Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya, Abira Bira Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truths, from the unreal to the real, from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om